Have you ever noticed how the deepest truths always slip away the moment you try to put them into words? It's as if the instant you begin to describe what is sacred, it hides, shyly retreating into silence. That's the curious thing about truth. The more you try to speak it, the more it disappears. We humans, we have a strange obsession with revealing, naming, defining. We chase words the way a child chases waves, catching nothing but foam, while the ocean itself remains untouched. We want to know, to hold enlightenment like a shiny stone and say, here, this is it. But what is real can never be captured that way, because the moment you try to own it, it slips through your fingers, as if to remind you that truth was never meant to be possessed, only experienced. You see, most people think spirituality is about discovery, about finding something new, adding another layer of understanding, building towards some final revelation. But more often, it's about unlearning. It's about peeling away the noise, the layers of trying, the endless self-improvement projects, until there's nothing left to fix. Only silence. Only the quiet hum of being. That's why the greatest secrets of the spirit must remain hidden. Not because someone guards them, but because the mind cannot bear to hold them. They exist just beyond the edge of speech, where thought loses its grip and awareness stands bare. Try to force them into language, and they crumble. Stay still long enough, and they begin to bloom, wordlessly. You've felt it, haven't you? That strange stillness between thoughts, that fleeting glimpse of something infinite, when you weren't trying to understand anything at all. It arrives like a whisper behind your breathing, and the moment you notice it, it vanishes again. The old masters used to say that words can only point to truth, but never contain it. Like fingers pointing to the moon. If you stare at the finger, you miss the light. The moon doesn't need your attention. It only needs your stillness. And so, there are 5 spiritual secrets that must stay hidden. Not because the world forbids them, but because the moment you speak them aloud, they lose their meaning. They live in the silence between sentences, in the space between breaths. That's where all real knowing begins. Let's begin with the first, the one that hides in plain sight, behind every act of seeking. You see, the moment you begin seeking truth, you quietly declare that it is lost. And that's the paradox. The very act of searching creates the distance between what you are and what you think you must become. It's a peculiar thing about the human mind. It believes that everything valuable must be earned, through effort, through struggle, through the passage of time. And so, it turns even enlightenment into a project. It starts a journey to reach a place that was never far away. Now that's the curious thing about it, because the more seriously you seek, the more tangled you become in the search. Like someone trying to smooth the surface of a pond with their hands. The more they stir, the less they can see their reflection. Stillness, not movement, reveals the truth. There are people who spend years chasing teachers, retreats, rituals, mantras, and books, all of which can be beautiful in their own way. But somewhere along the line, they forget what they were actually looking for. They confuse the pointing finger for the moon itself. They start believing that salvation is always one more effort away. And the mind, it loves that game. It keeps the self occupied. It says, one day I'll arrive, one day I'll be free. But that one day never comes, because the one who is chasing freedom is the very thing that must dissolve for freedom to be known. You see, the seeker and the sought are not two. They are the same movement, the ocean pretending to search for its own depth. When the wave goes looking for the sea, it forgets it already is the sea. And this is where most people remain unaware. They are swimming in what they seek, yet calling it absence. It's rather amusing, isn't it? The harder you try to become peaceful, the more restless you feel. The harder you strive for love, the more fear creeps in. Because the effort to get there silently confirms that you are not there. Now, this doesn't mean the path has no meaning. It means the walking was never toward something. It was always within something. Every step you take toward the truth simply unfolds within the truth. It's like a dream character, wandering the dream in search of the dreamer. And when this is seen clearly, the seeking ends on its own. Not because you finally found what you were looking for, but because the one who was looking dissolves. There is no path, because there is nowhere else to go. There is no final revelation, only the quiet recognition that you were never apart from what you sought. When you stop chasing, the pond becomes still, and in that stillness, the reflection returns. Perfect, untouched, whole. The seeker vanishes, and what remains is simply awareness, aware of itself. But when the seeker dissolves, something even subtler begins to appear, a question of identity itself, and the next secret hides there. Here is the next section of your script, formatted as requested. You spend your whole life trying to find yourself, never realizing you're wearing the disguise you call me. That's the grand illusion. You walk through the world polishing the mask, adjusting it, improving it, presenting it to others, and yet beneath all that effort, there's a quiet knowing that none of it is truly you. It's quite funny when you think about it. Everyone is busy performing sincerity, terrified to stop performing. There are people who even turn humility into a performance, pretending not to pretend. They want to be seen as real while hiding behind the image of being real. You see, the self, this sense of I, this bundle of memories and stories, is not an enemy. It's a necessary illusion. It allows consciousness to play the game of being human. Just as the ocean becomes a wave without ever ceasing to be the ocean, consciousness becomes a person without ever ceasing to be infinite. That's the paradox. The mask is not false, it's just incomplete. It's what allows you to enter the stage of life and say, here I am. But the trouble begins when you forget you're acting, when you start believing that the mask is all there is. Now imagine a mirror fogged with breath. You can still see your reflection, but it's blurred, unclear, uncertain. That's what happens when awareness becomes too identified with the mask. The breath of thought, of memory, of fear clouds the surface. And yet, underneath, the reflection has always been perfect. Most people live in that fog, mistaking the blur for their identity. They say, this is who I am, pointing to their roles, their opinions, their pain, and they defend it fiercely, because to let it go feels like death. But here's the secret. The fear of losing yourself is really the fear of being infinite, because the moment the mask falls, the boundaries disappear, and what remains is vast, formless, uncontainable awareness. No name, no history, no edges. That's why the second secret must stay hidden. The self cannot bear to hear that it doesn't exist, not as it thinks it does. It clings to its stories, to its sense of separateness, because without them, it would have to face the silence behind the mask. And yet, that silence is not emptiness. It's freedom. It's the open sky behind every passing cloud. It's what you've been all along, pretending to be a person for the sheer joy of the play. And when you glimpse beyond the mask, even for a moment, a strange stillness arises, a space untouched by time, untroubled by thought. And that stillness, that luminous emptiness, is where the third secret quietly dwells. That's the paradox most cannot bear to face. We imagine creation as an act of addition, as something added to the void. But in truth, it is the void itself that gives birth to all things. You see, the mind fears emptiness. It tries to fill it with words, with plans, with noise, anything to avoid the silence that feels like absence. But the silence is not empty at all. It is pregnant with everything that could ever exist. Think of music. Without the pauses, without the spaces between notes, there would be no melody, only chaos. It's the silence that gives shape to the sound. The listener doesn't realize it, but what moves them most is not the note itself, but the stillness surrounding it. It's quite marvelous, really. The same truth is found in art, in love, in life itself. A painter creates not by covering a canvas with color, but by leaving space, by allowing the white to breathe. Without the empty space, the form cannot speak. Without the gaps, the dance has no rhythm. Now that's where most people remain unaware. They treat emptiness as something to conquer, a void to escape from. But in doing so, they only multiply their suffering, because the more you resist the void, the more it consumes you, and the more you chase fullness, the more hollow you become. True stillness is not the absence of movement, it is the movement that needs no effort. It's like the pause between waves, the breath before dawn, the black sky that lets the stars exist. Emptiness is not a hole in reality, it is the open hand of existence itself, ready to hold everything without grasping anything. When you stop fighting the void, something extraordinary happens. You begin to feel its gentle pulse, the quiet hum beneath all noise. You realize that what you called nothing was never nothing at all. It was the field from which everything springs, and to which everything returns. That's the strange beauty of it. To name it would be to fill it. To describe it would be to disturb its stillness. And so the third secret must stay hidden, not because it is forbidden, but because it can only live unspoken. But when you accept emptiness, when you allow it to exist without reaching to change it, the world returns, radiant, alive, whole. And now, you begin to see the fourth secret, hiding quietly within imperfection itself. You spend your life trying to fix yourself, not realizing you were never broken. That's the strange game of being human. You keep polishing the mirror, hoping that one day it will stop reflecting your flaws, not noticing that the cracks were what made it shine in the first place. It's quite funny, really. The more you try to perfect yourself, the further you drift from the natural perfection that was always there. Because what you call imperfection, the flaws, the failures, the scars, are the texture of life itself. Without them, there would be no contrast, no depth, no story worth living. There are people who spend their entire lives chasing symmetry, balance, order, as if beauty could only exist when things are even and aligned. But look closely at nature. The mountains are jagged, the rivers bend, the stars scatter across the sky in wild asymmetry. Even the universe itself expands through chaos, and somehow, in that chaos, everything finds harmony. You see, life was never meant to be a straight line. It curves, it breaks, it dances between light and shadow, and that dance, that imperfection, is where you find its grace. It's where laughter and sorrow meet, where love and loss hold hands. Perfection, in the way the mind imagines it, is sterile, lifeless, frozen. Nothing moves in perfection, because movement itself implies a flaw, a deviation, a becoming. Think of a cracked pot filled with gold, the art of kintsugi.
The break becomes the most precious part. The crack isn't hidden, it's celebrated. Because the flaw revealed the beauty that was invisible before. It's the same with you. Every failure, every mistake, every wound, they're not interruptions in your perfection. They're how perfection reveals itself through you. Now, that's where most people remain unaware. They believe they must earn worthiness by correcting what life has already blessed. But the struggle to be perfect is really a rebellion against your own humanness. It's a refusal to accept that you are made of both shadow and light. The mind doesn't like that. It thrives on control, and perfection is its favorite prison. And that's why the fourth secret must stay hidden. Because once you see that imperfection is perfection in disguise, the mind loses its game. There's nothing left to improve, nothing left to chase, only life, whole, messy, radiant, unfolding exactly as it must. But when perfection collapses, something luminous emerges, a silence beyond right and wrong, a stillness that no flaw can touch. And in that silence lives the final secret, the one that can never be spoken, only felt, is the one that ends all secrets. It is the silence beneath every sound, the stillness behind every movement, the nothing that holds everything. It cannot be taught, because teaching would make it false. It cannot be spoken, because speech divides what is whole. You see, the moment you try to describe the infinite, it collapses into something small, a concept, an image, a name, and names are boundaries. Words carve the ocean into shapes that never really exist. That is the beautiful tragedy of language. It points toward truth, but can never hold it. It's curious, isn't it, how people search for truth in words, as if enlightenment were a sentence waiting to be found. They travel across continents, gather scriptures, repeat mantras, all in search of something that was never missing. But the truth they seek has no voice, no form, no edge to grasp. It is like the space between breaths, unnoticed, yet essential. There is an old story of a monk who spent years in silence, sitting under a tree. One day, a traveler approached and asked, "What is enlightenment?" The monk simply laughed, not a laugh of mockery, but of recognition, the kind that comes when the game is seen for what it is. That laugh contained more truth than any scripture ever written, because the moment you try to say what it is, it slips away. The truth, you can point toward it, you can feel it, you can live it, but you cannot imprison it in sound. For sound is the movement of air, and the truth is the space that allows air to move at all. Words divide, silence unites. When you fall into silence, not forced silence, but the effortless kind, you begin to feel it, that deep stillness, where the mind finally stops chasing itself, where time dissolves, and there is no one left to reach for anything, only the pure awareness of being. That's the great secret. It cannot be given, cannot be taught, cannot even be owned, because it isn't something you have, it's what you are. And so the fifth secret must stay hidden, not to keep it away from you, but because it was never apart from you to begin with. It's the silence, watching you now, the space between these words, the awareness that hears without effort, that breathes without command. And yet, once you've heard it, even in silence, life begins to change, not because something new has been found, but because the search has quietly ended. And so the circle closes, where it began, not in knowledge, but in wonder, not in speaking, but in stillness. The ocean has returned to itself, and you, as always, were never apart from it. You might wonder if you've truly understood these secrets. Of course you haven't. Neither has anyone. That's the point. The mind always wants to capture understanding, to hold it, define it, name it. But the moment it does, the truth slips away. Awareness isn't about mastering truth. It's about being soft enough to listen. Because what is real cannot be held by thought, only felt, quietly, beneath it. It's curious, isn't it? You've heard of the seeker, the mask, the emptiness, the imperfection, the silence. Each one sounded different, yet they all point to the same thing, the stillness behind everything you think you are. They are not steps on a path, not instructions to follow, but mirrors placed at different angles, each one reflecting the same light, from a slightly different face. You see, life has a way of speaking in whispers. The truth never arrives with thunder or applause. It comes in moments so ordinary you almost miss them. A breath between thoughts, a pause in conversation, a quiet recognition that you've been running in circles and there's nowhere else to go. Now, look back at the images we've traveled through. The pond that clears when you stop stirring it, the mask that melts when you stop pretending to be whole, the emptiness that hums with creation, the cracks filled with gold, and the silence that waits patiently beneath all sound. Do you see it now? They were never separate at all, like rivers meeting the ocean. They merge into one vast awareness, the gentle recognition that nothing was ever missing, that everything you sought was already here, quietly breathing with you. The pond, the mask, the silence, they were all you, different expressions of the same consciousness, playing hide and seek with itself, and that's where the release begins. You realize there was never anything to hide, only truths too delicate to be shouted, truths that reveal themselves when you stop trying to reveal them, when you simply let the moment be what it is. Now, the seeking softens, the questions loosen their grip, and what remains is simple, a quiet, effortless awareness that needs nothing to complete it. And so, we end not with knowledge, but with quiet, not with answers, but with understanding, a return to simplicity, a return to being, because in the end, that's all there ever was. Just this, the breath, the stillness, the unfolding mystery, and it was enough, all along. Leewards, the 5 spiritual secrets must stay hidden, not because they're forbidden, but because they live in silence. They were never meant to be spoken like instructions, or guarded like treasure. They exist in the quiet spaces, between thoughts, between heartbeats, between all the words you use to make sense of life. You see, the truth is never found in what can be said. It is revealed in what remains after the speaking stops. The moment you stop trying to reveal it, it reveals itself, because every attempt to name the sacred only hides it again beneath the veil of sound. It's quite marvelous, really. All of life plays this same game, hiding and revealing, appearing and disappearing, like waves upon the sea. One moment, the ocean dances wildly, and the next it returns to stillness, and in that stillness, you realize the waves were never separate from the sea at all. That's the great paradox of awakening. The more you search, the further you drift. The more you release, the closer you become. It isn't a journey to another place. It's the gentle dissolving of the illusion that you were ever apart from what you seek. Think of it like the breath after a storm. The wind has gone quiet, the air feels soft again, and the world, though unchanged, somehow feels brand new. That's what happens when you stop trying to hold life still. It breathes on its own. You begin to see that the beauty of these secrets is in their elusiveness. They are not things to know, but ways of seeing. They are not destinations, but doorways, ones that open only when you stop trying to force them open. And in that surrender, something profound happens. Gratitude arises, not for what you've discovered, but for the mystery that remains, for not knowing, and yet being alive enough to wonder, for being both the question and the answer, the drop in the ocean, the silence and the song. And so, as all seekers eventually learn, the search ends where it began, in the simple presence of being. The truth was never hidden in the stars, or buried in sacred texts. It was here, quietly breathing through you, from the very beginning. You don't need to uncover the hidden. You only need to fall quiet enough to feel it, breathing through you,